Hey, Tuxdale Luke here, and in today's video we are comparing CarPlay screens. I have 6 screens stacked against each other, ranging from £70 all the way up to £229. Question is, do you get more when you pay more? That's going to be interesting, and I will give you a spoiler that the results are also not what you would expect them to be. So in this video we are comparing widescreen format CarPlay units. So they are kind of apples to apples, all this similar size. I will be doing future tests with different formats in the future, but I've left a massive spreadsheet in the description below. Go and check it out. There's all the results benchmarked against each other. Future screens will also be incorporated into that. So I'm going to keep a running total, and you can sift through yourself depending on features to find out which screen is right for you. So without further ado, let's get into this. This is a big video, biggest video I've ever made, and boy was this difficult to film, but we got there in the end. And also check out the links in the description below if you want to go and see where to get these screens from as well. Starting at £70 is the Temu screen, and the cheapest one on our list. It's a screen that I've reviewed before on the channel, but I'm also using it as part of this showdown. It uses a standardised mount that most of these screens use, and connectivity is pretty good, featuring an auxiliary output, an input for a backup camera, a USB Type-A and microSD slot for media, as well as USB Type-C power input. Unfortunately, I no longer have the box for this, as I've had this for over 6 months. But it includes a power adapter that has a Type-C output as well as a Type-A pass-through. Interestingly, this power adapter is a 12-volt output through the USB, not the regular 5 volts. It also includes a dash mount and 2 sticky pads, but doesn't include a windscreen mount. At $100 is the Seicane, and for that money it does boast a few more features when compared to the Temu, including a 4K dashcam on the rear. We're going to be testing that later. Connectivity is actually very good and can be expanded, as we'll see in a bit. But as standard on the unit is an audio output, a microSD slot for dashcam footage, backup camera input, and a Type-C port for power. Overall build quality is pretty good, but as you can see it doesn't use a standardised mount, which means that the unit can't really be moved between vehicles or have a windscreen mount installed. And unfortunately the Seicane does lose a couple of points in this category because of that. Accessories include a backup camera and a 3.5mm audio cable, but interestingly the power adapter also features a Type-A port and GPS antenna for expanding the capabilities of this unit. For just an extra $4 you can purchase a book line which allows you to hardwire this unit into your car. This also allows you to turn the ignition off but still have the dash cam recording even though the screen's blank for when you're away from the car. On the other end you have the Type-A port as well as a GPS input and of course Type-C power. Jumping up to £140 is the Enon P4, which also includes a 4K dashcam on the rear as well as a reversing camera. Connectivity compared to the other units is a little bit on the lighter side, with just an auxiliary output, a microSD slot, a reversing camera input and a Type-C power port. However, the Enon does include a 64GB microSD card. It's also got a slightly nicer box than any other screen on this list, making it a bit more presentable if you want to give one as a gift. Build quality is actually pretty good. It's got nice chamfered edges which makes it feel like a nice sleek unit, and it's also not too heavy. On the back you're going to see that it's got the dash cam which raises up out of its normal position if you want to extend it a bit higher, and next to it is a power button as well to turn the screen off. It also uses a standardised mount that most of these screens use, which allows you to purchase different accessories if needed. Accessories include a windscreen mount that also extends out, a backup camera, dashboard mount, 3.5mm audio cable as well as some trim removal tools. The power connector is a 12V to 5V Type-C connection and also has a 5V USB Type-A pass-through, which is very handy to have. For £15 more is the Lamtto RC14, which appears to be an identical unit to the Enon. It also comes with a 64GB microSD card, but the packaging is not quite as nice. On Bootup though, there is a slightly different splash screen as well as a couple of different icons on the home screen. It will be interesting putting this up against the cheaper Enon to see if there are any real differences between the two units. And all accessories in the box are absolutely identical to what the Enon comes with, including the power cable. At £165 is the Podofo, and this offers some unique features compared to the other screens on this test. The most notable one being that it runs a full version of Android 13, which allows you to access the Google Play Store and download maps or even Netflix. This means you don't need CarPlay or any devices connected to actually get a lot of functionality off this unit. Connectivity is also very good, including a GPS input, microSD slot, backup input, Type-C power input, Type-A USB connection, as well as a 3.5mm audio output. Build quality doesn't feel quite as refined as the Enon, but you will notice on the back there is a dash cam as well that can be raised up. This is a 1080p dash cam, and below that is the standardized mount that most of these screens in this test also use. Interestingly, the front half of this unit, the screen, appears to be the same one that's used on the Temu. It'll be interesting to see how much differences there are in the display and functionality between these two units. Accessories are also pretty good, including a dash mount, GPS antenna, 3.5mm audio cable, backup camera, and a 64GB microSD card. The only notable exception from this list is a windscreen mount. Coming in at £239 is by far the most expensive one on this list, the Carpuride W103, but I actually had to buy myself because I couldn't secure a review sample for this video. Connectivity is very good on the Carpuride, including a microSD slot, a camera input, audio output, USB Type-A for data, and a 5V USB Type-C power input. But it also includes a microphone input, which no other screen on this test has, and we are going to be testing that out. Compared to the other units on this list, it's the largest and most chunky and cumbersome to hold. It really doesn't feel as sleek as its price would suggest. However, it is built quite well and still uses a standard mount. It's also worth noting that this unit does not have a built-in dashcam. Accessories include a dashboard mount, windscreen mount, and a 3.5mm audio jack, but it is also worth noting that this unit does not include a backup camera. The USB connection also does not have a Type-A pass-through, so unfortunately on the accessory side, the Carpuride is probably one of the lightest. Being able to boot up quickly and consistently into Apple CarPlay is a vital characteristic in the performance of these CarPlay screens. Therefore, using my iPhone 15 Pro, I booted each screen up 10 times into Apple CarPlay, leaving a 2-minute cooldown period in between each run. I clocked the results down, worked out the averages, and then put them into a spreadsheet. Any screen that took more than 1 minute failed that run. Starting off with the Temu, the first characteristic that's strange is that it requires a 12V power input, not 5V like the others. This means that other USB adapters will not work to power this screen. To say the Temu screen is inconsistent would be an understatement. It was very quick booting to the home screen, and when it did connect to wireless CarPlay, it connected very fastly, with its best time being just 13 seconds, the best of any screen in this test. However, the problem with the Temu screen is that it either connected very fastly or would actually exceed a minute to connect, so there was really no middle ground. With 4 of its 10 runs exceeding 1 minute, that gave it a pass rate of just 60% and an average time of 40.6 seconds to connect to wireless CarPlay.
They've done studies, 60% of the time it works every time.
The Seicane is able to accept USB Type-A to USB Type-C power input, but not a Type-C to Type-C power connection. However, the results were much more consistent, with an average time of 33.1 seconds, with a range between the best and worst times being just 3 seconds. The Seicane moves into first place. The Enon can accept a Type-A to Type-C power connection, but not a Type-C to Type-C. In a boot-up test, it took an average of 22.7 seconds to boot into Apple CarPlay, with the range between the fastest and slowest times being 8 seconds. The Enon comfortably moves into first place. Moving on to the Lamtto RC14, the Enon's almost identical twin sister, are we going to see any differences between the two? Well, surprisingly, yes. Whilst the Lamtto does accept a Type-A to Type-C power connection, it also accepts a Type-C to Type-C power connection, unlike the Enon. Surprising. Also, in the boot-up test, it was a little bit quicker, with an average time of just 20.1 seconds compared to the Enon's 22.7, but it did have a slightly bigger range of 10 seconds between the slowest and fastest time compared to the Enon's 8. This still puts it into first place. The Podofo accepts a USB Type-A to Type-C power connection, but not a Type-C to Type-C. In its boot-up test, it took a long time to get to the home screen, which is probably due to the Android operating system being heavier than the Linux-based ones of the other units. However, it did boot up consistently into CarPlay every single time. Its average time was 35.8 seconds, with a range between the fastest and slowest of just 2 seconds. However, this puts it in second to last place, just ahead of the Temu and just behind the Seicane. The Carpuride accepts a Type A to Type C power connection, but not Type C to Type C. However, in its boot-up test, the Carpuride was extremely impressive. It was able to boot in with an average time of just 19 seconds, with a range between the fastest and slowest of 0 seconds. How's that for consistency? At least in the boot-up test, the price is definitely justified. Looking at the graphs, we do get some interesting insights. The Temu was by far the quickest to boot to its home screen, and the Podofo was by far the longest. The Podofo does have Android installed, so it's a heavy operating system, and can somewhat be forgiven for taking longer to boot up. Now, if we look at the time from completely off to boot into wireless CarPlay though, the Carpuride is easily the best, easily the most consistent. The Temu was just wildly inconsistent. Which is a shame, because when it did boot from nothing into CarPlay and it was quick, it was like 14 seconds. It was by far the quickest. But then it was contrasted to being by far the longest when it didn't want to connect, because it was like 1 to 2 minutes. So unfortunately, it's a real shame, because the Temu could have won this test very easily if it was just consistent. And when we look at the individual data, this is out of a total of 10 points on here. 5 points are awarded for how quick it gets to wireless CarPlay, as well as the other points will be in the type of connections it has and the range and consistency. Unfortunately, the Temu gets nothing. It basically lost all its points because the pass rate was so poor. Also, it doesn't get any points because it's 12-volt power inputs, which means it doesn't accept any like other type of USB connections. On the other side of stuff, the Carpuride does win this test. It almost scored perfectly. The only thing it doesn't have is USB-C to C power, which would be really, really nice. And that's purely the reason why the Lamtto edged out the Enon on this test, because otherwise they were very, very close in their results, except for that USB-C to C power. I started off by testing the brightness in a dark room with my camera set to night vision mode, and the Temu did fantastically with a score of 949.5 lux. That actually beat out my iPhone 15. In terms of clarity, the Temu was also very good, with text being very easy to read. However, the Temu does fall down on a couple of other areas, the main one being responsiveness. Sometimes the Temu screen will respond to the lightest touch and perform flawlessly. Other times it requires a very heavy input of your finger, and sometimes the screen doesn't want to move at all. Whether this is a software glitch or hardware, I'm not too sure. Also, the Temu screen doesn't have auto brightness, so you're going to have to change that yourself depending on the lighting conditions. The Seicane puts in an impressive score of 854.4 lux, still very, very good. In terms of clarity, the Seicane wasn't quite as good as the others on this test, with text just appearing a little bit more fuzzy than the other screens. However, it was still easily readable and not a problem on the road. It just doesn't look quite as slick. In terms of other features, the Seicane screen is very responsive with no issues there, but it doesn't support auto brightness, so like the Temu, you're going to have to change that depending on the lighting conditions. The Enon didn't perform so well in this test, only reaching 465.2 lux. Whilst it's still relatively easily readable on a bright day, it's definitely not in the same league as the Seicane and the Temu. However, one thing that does go in its favour is that the screen is not too reflective, so that does also help clarity. Here's where things start to get interesting, and unfortunately I didn't hit record on the camera for this one, even though I did the test, so I'm sorry about that. But up to this point, you think the Lamtto and the Enon seem to be identical units, but in this test, the Lamtto did perform noticeably better. Well, on the brightness test at least. Hitting 497.2 lux compared to the Enon's 465.2. In terms of glare resistance, they seem to be largely identical, or no perceivable difference in them. As so for the clarity, both of them are very, very clear screens, and there's no issue whatsoever reading text that's close up to it. Also, both screens are extremely responsive and support auto brightness as well. The Podofo is going to be an interesting screen because on the initial impression, it appears to be the same screen as the Temu, at least physically, but the results are completely different. It hits a respectable 628.7 lux, which is definitely not to be sniffed at, but it's nowhere near the Temu's 949.5. Also, when it comes to the resolution it's running at, it seems to be a little bit different. Now, this might just be the operating system, but icons seem a little bit smaller. Clarity, though, is very, very good, and there's absolutely no issues with that, and it still gets very good marks for clarity. And then, if you look at the responsiveness, where the Temu had that really bad issue of not responding sometimes, the Podofo never has that issue. It's very quick, it's responsive, it responds to your touch absolutely every time with no problems. So it's a very different screen to the Temu, even though the physical unit on the front appears to be identical. So it makes me wonder how much of this is software driven behind it. In terms of auto brightness, unfortunately the Podofo doesn't support that, so that's something you're going to have to change yourself. Despite being the most expensive unit on this test, the Carpuride is the dullest, with just 434.9 lux. Now, I know this doesn't sound much less than the Enon and the Lamtto, but in actual usability it is. And I think this is partly due to the fact that the Carpuride has a very, very reflective and glossy screen. So even in medium lighting conditions outside, the reflections are really showing on the screen, making it very difficult to read what's on the screen, especially if you're wearing something like sunglasses in the car. In terms of the other aspects of the screen though, it's absolutely great. It responds very well, clarity is very good, and it has auto brightness. It's really just a shame that it's either not a little bit less glossy or just didn't have a little bit more brightness to cut through that. An interesting thing about this is that the Temu and the Seicane are the two brighter screens on this list, but they're also the two cheaper screens, and the Carpuride, which is the most expensive, is also the dullest. When it comes to clarity, all the screens are really, really good. The Seicane, not quite as good, but still no problem reading it. It's just that it wasn't quite as crisp. When we look at a more detailed breakdown of the points for the screens, there's a maximum of 12 points that can be awarded on these categories. And the Carpuride, along with the Enon and Lamtto, perform the best, with the Temu, Podofo and Seicane just trailing behind. Again, it's a real shame this Temu one could have been the best screen easily if it was responsive. Unfortunately, when you touch the screen, sometimes it works absolutely great, no problems whatsoever. Other times, you have to stab the screen with your finger a few times until it works. Again, this could be a software glitch, I'm not too sure. If that was sorted out, it would easily be the best screen. And the fact that Podofo and the Seicane have cameras on the back but don't have auto brightness is a little bit of a missed opportunity, I think, as well, because it is very useful to have. Overall impressions of the Carpuride versus the Enon and Lamtto is that I still prefer the Enon and Lamtto screens, despite having the same results, because they seem a little less glossy, they are a little bit brighter technically, and I do find when you use them in the car, they are easier to see than the Carpuride. Look, this section looks at the screen's design, including its weight, its dimensions, and its user interface. Starting off with the Temu screen, the home screen is relatively nice and well laid out, but it is over two separate screens, requiring a bit more swiping than is necessary. When you go into CarPlay though, there is a quick access menu you can get from swiping down from the top, which is really nice because it's comprehensive, it's neat, it's out of the way, and there's lots of controls on here, as well as having the ability to switch the LCD off, which you can then turn back on just by tapping the LCD. Whilst the screen's performing pretty well here with touch input, you can see that there is some issues here where it's not responding to my finger, and sometimes this can be more pronounced than others. Its actual design and finish though is really nice. It's got a nice glass front to it, it feels well built, and overall is quite a sleek screen. Moving on to the Seicane, it is a pretty well designed unit, but the home screen is a bit dull. It doesn't look aesthetically too nice, but it's very usable and everything is where you need it to be laid out. There is a quick access button in the bottom right, which sometimes gets in the way but can be moved around the screen if necessary. It's not too big of a deal. I do like that on the top though, there is a power button to turn the unit off, and just tap the screen once to turn it back on. When it comes to the actual design of the dash cam on the back, I do think it's a little bit low down the way it's placed. It could be like higher up, that would be much better. Offset would be even better as well, so you could use a windscreen windscreen mount. But the overall build quality is relatively good. Not as good as the Temu, but for the money, pretty nice. The Lamtto and Enon I'm doing as one because they are so similar. The Enon's home screen is beautiful. It's very, very nice. Laid out all perfectly on one screen. It looks fresh and it looks nice. There's a quick access menu in the bottom right. Tap it once and you have access to the camera and the brightness. So it's quite easy to get to that. Not as nice as the Temu's, but still very good. If just looking at the Lamtto screen as well, it's very, very similar. I don't think aesthetically it looks as nice. It's a bit duller, but the layout is all very much the same. All the menus are the same. I like that it's got power buttons on top again. You can turn it off and just tap the screen to bring it back on. The dash cam is placed very nicely to one-sided offset, which means that the windscreen mount doesn't get in the way, and it can be raised above the unit to get a better field of view. So really, really nice design. And the screen is finished off very nice as well. It's got these chamfered tapered edges. They look really nice, and it's just overall a really, really nicely built unit, and probably my favorite one to hold. The Podofo is pretty good on the front of it. Its user interface is nice, especially on an Android. It's actually very clean for Android. It's all on one screen. I like that it's got a quick access menu like the others still, and you've got quick access to other stuff like your cameras like the other ones have as well. Also in the top right there is a power button to turn the screen on and off just like the others, whereas the others, so you can tap the screen to bring it back on. With this one you actually have to push the power button again. Not a big deal, but still nice. It's got that functionality there anyway, so very, very good. When you go to the back though, it's a bit clunkier. It doesn't look quite as sleek, and the dash cam is in a weird place. It's right in the middle. It means you can't use a windscreen mount without getting in the way. Offset it and it will be great in terms of location if it's like the Enon. Finally, moving on to the Carpuride. This unit is huge, it's massive, it's heavy, and as you can see, I've already smashed the screen. I'll get to that in a second. One thing I really don't like, there is no quick access menu anywhere. You can't guess it, you can't swipe down. Even pushing the power button doesn't turn the display on and off. There's no way of making the LCD go off, which I hate. If you hold the power button, the display shuts down and you have to reboot the entire display back up. So that's a real pain in the backside. I don't like that. Also, to just alter the brightness, you have to back out to the home screen, push the brightness button, alter the brightness, and then go back into CarPlay. When you're trying to do that driving, way too many swipes. The user interface is pretty awful, even though the home screen is relatively well laid out when you're just using it normally. It's also got this big ugly Carpuride logo. It's got big thick bezels, and it's just really not a nice unit. It feels old, and it's my least favorite design out of any of the units on this list. To emphasize the size of the Carpuride, the Temu screen is placed in the top left in the exact same place that the Carpuride is, and the Temu screen is very representative of the other screens in this test, but you can see how much bigger the Carpuride is. You think this would translate to a bigger viewing experience in terms of screen real estate, but that's really not the case. Because of the huge bezels, if you look at the right graph, screen to units percentage or bezel size, the Carpuride has a score of about 67%. That's basically like the screen only takes up 67% of the unit's fascia. Whereas you get to like the Seicane and the Lamtto, and you're looking closer to about 78%, which is much, much better. So there's much less wasted space. Also, taking weight into account, because that's quite important, a lighter screen means that the mounts are going to be doing less work to keep them in place. So less chance for bouncing, less chance of it falling off the car. And as you can see, most of the screens fall in around, well, under 500 grams, with the Enon and the Lamtto being exceptionally light. The Carpuride, however, comes in at over 605 grams. It is 50% heavier than the Enon, which is significant. It was so significant, in fact, that it actually toppled over my test rig, and that's how I ended up with a smashed screen, because all the other screens were super steady. I put down on a test rig, and it fell off onto the floor and broke the screen. Of course, that is my fault for not building the test rig right, but it does emphasize that the extra weight can cause instability, and if you imagine this is on a windscreen, there's more chance of that coming off. Suffice it to say, in this test, the Enon and the Lamtto actually win this with 25 points out of 34. They are very nicely designed units. Biggest thing I would like to see added to them would be microphone input, and unsurprisingly, the Carpuride actually comes in last at 16 points. This test is designed to push the FM transmitters to the limits. For this, I'm using my Sony voice recorder, which has an FM radio built in, which can record directly to the device. For the antenna, I'm using the end of an audio jack, since this is going to have very, very poor reception and really push these transmitters to the limits. Every screen is using its original power adapter plugged into a 12-volt outlet. This is because some screens do require the original power adapter to transmit a full power. I then tuned the screen into a frequency that's not used in my local area, in this case 91.7 MHz, and matched the same frequency on my voice recorder. The Temu screen is very easy to tune in and has 6 presets along the bottom, but unfortunately those presets can't seem to be saved to your own custom stations. The Podofo was very strange. It does have an FM transmitter built in, and when I put my radio to the same frequency, the static disappears because there is a signaler. However, whatever audio goes to my iPhone cannot seem to go through the CarPlay screen and be transmitted. It's just not there as an option. If you look on my phone's Bluetooth screen, it doesn't have the option to send the audio to the CarPlay screen. And I tried every single setting for this, so it seems like it's got a weird software glitch in this where you cannot transmit over FM. And I can't understand why it's doing that, but unfortunately this completely fails the test.
Make a U-turn where safe. Please proceed to highlighted route. Please make a U-turn where safe. Bing, bong, in 50 yards. Turn left.
I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Please make a U-turn where safe. Please proceed to highlighted route. Please make a U-turn where safe. Bing, bong, in 50 yards. Turn left.
I'm Siri. Choose the voice voice you'd like me to use.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Please make a U-turn where safe. Please proceed to highlighted route. Please make a U-turn where safe. Bing, bong, in 50 yards. Turn left.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Where safe. Please proceed to highlighted route. Please make a U-turn where safe. Bing, bong, in 50 yards. Turn left.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Please make a U-turn where safe. Please proceed to highlighted route. Please make a U-turn where safe. Bing, bong, in 50 yards. Turn left.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Please make a U-turn where safe. Please proceed to highlighted route. Please make a U-turn where safe. Bing, bong, in 50 yards. Turn left. Please make a U-turn where safe. Please proceed to highlighted route. Please make a U-turn where safe. Bing, bong, in 50 yards. Turn left.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Hi, I'm Siri. Choose the voice you'd like me to use.
Typically with these screens there's four ways of outputting audio: Bluetooth, FM transmitter, auxiliary output, or the internal speaker. So you're typically only going to be using one of these for yourself. Now when it comes to the FM transmitter, the Temu was easily the best, again very surprising. The Podofo just wouldn't even transmit, which was very disappointing. When it comes to speaker volume, the Carpuride was easily the best as the overall built-in speaker. Its actual overall volume is only the same as the Enon, but it was a much fuller sound, less distortion in there, and it was actually pretty good. Again, the Podofo just somehow would not output any audio through its internal speaker through CarPlay. Looking at the points breakdown, here's how it goes. The FM transmitters have a maximum of 5 points, and the Temu takes full points on that. Again, the Seicane and the Podofo did very, very bad on this test. When it comes to speaker ratings, this only has a maximum of 3 because I know it's a last resort that someone's going to be using the internal speaker, but the Carpuride gets maximum 3 out of 3 points on this. The Podofo gets nothing because it didn't even work. When it comes to Bluetooth connections, that's probably one most people will use, and it's either got a Bluetooth connection or it hasn't, so it's 5 points or 0 points. The Temu does not support Bluetooth, which is shocking really, because the Bluetooth connection is all software based. Because the way these work, these screens, the Bluetooth connection goes directly from your phone for audio to the car, because the screen kind of doesn't take the audio and it just directs it over there. But it has to have the software enabled on the screen to allow this bypass to happen. There is a workaround with the Temu. There's a pop-out banner coming up at the top now, but it's a bit convoluted and there's no reason why we shouldn't be doing this. Again, let down on software. It would have won this entire test if it supported Bluetooth, but it doesn't, so it's in the bottom half of the test because of that. Very frustrating. All support auxiliary out, and some of them support equalizers. The equalizers don't really work with Bluetooth connections because the audio is going directly from phone to car, but if you use one of the other outputs, the equalizer will work, which allows, for example, maybe the Carpuride speaker to sound even better, because I used a flat equalizer and I didn't tweak it, so you can definitely get some better results out of that. Anyway, that basically means the Carpuride got 17 out of 20. It was almost perfect. It just got let down on the FM transmitter, but the rest of the audio with the Carpuride is very good. The Enon and the Lamtto is very good as well. It just doesn't have the equalizer, which would have been cool to see. Good call quality is essential, and so for this test we're going to be doing this as consistently and as controlled as possible. So on my iPad there is a monologue that simulates a phone call, and this is connected to my Bluetooth speaker, which is set at 50% volume, which is about the same volume as someone speaking, and it's about the same distance away as someone being sat in the driver's seat. The CarPlay unit is going to be connected to my iPhone 15, and from there it's going to be making a call all the way through to this old iPhone SE over FaceTime, and then the iPhone SE has an audio jack connected all the way into this voice recorder, and this is going to be recording the audio coming from this phone. Crucially, this is going to be testing the microphone quality of this unit.
Hello? Hi there. Yeah, I'm just calling to do a test run, basically. So this recording is literally just for testing audio units, CarPlay screens, that kind of thing. And what I'm going to do is simulate the way I'm talking when I'm actually driving in the car. So as you can hear, there's a bit of road noise behind me as well. My voice is a little bit raised, as it would be when I'm trying to talk into a hands-free system. So I'm going to be using this test throughout every other screen and radio I use, and then hopefully that will give you a consistent result, especially if you play it at the same distance and the same volume in each single test I do. Hello? Hi there. Yeah, I'm just calling to do a test run, basically. So this recording is literally just for testing audio units, CarPlay screens, that kind of thing. And what I'm going to do is simulate the way I'm talking when I'm actually driving in the car. So as you can hear, there's a bit of road noise behind me as well. My voice is a little bit raised, as it would be when I'm trying to talk into a hands-free system. So I'm going to be using this test throughout every other screen radio I use. And then hopefully that will give you a consistent result, especially if it's played at the same distance and the same volume in each single test I do. Hello? Hi there. Yeah, I'm just calling to do a test run, basically. So this recording is literally just for testing audio units, CarPlay screens, that kind of thing. And what I'm going to do is simulate the way I'm talking when I'm actually driving in the car. So as you can hear, there's a bit of road noise behind me as well. My voice is a little bit raised, as it would be when I'm trying to talk into a hands-free system. So I'm going to be using this test throughout every other screen and radio I use. And then hopefully that will give you a consistent result, especially if it's played at the same distance and the same volume in each single test I do. Hello? Hi there. Yeah, I'm just calling to do a test run, basically. So this recording is literally just for testing audio units, CarPlay screens, that kind of thing. And what I'm going to do is simulate the way I'm talking when I'm actually driving in the car. So as you can hear, there's a bit of road noise behind me as well. My voice is a little bit raised, as it would be when I'm trying to talk into a hands-free system. So I'm going to be using this test throughout every other screen and radio I use. And then hopefully that will give you a consistent result, especially if it's played at the same distance and the same volume in each single test I do.
No matter what I tried, the Podofo just didn't have that functionality to do a phone call. I looked at the options, the Bluetooth options on my phone, tried to transmit it to the Podofo, it doesn't even show up. It's just, again, very, very poor with its Bluetooth connection and kind of unexplainable why it does it, and also unacceptable.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm just calling to do a test run, basically. So this recording is literally just for testing audio units, CarPlay screens, that kind of thing. And what I want to do is simulate the way I'm talking when I'm actually driving in the car. So as you can hear, there's a bit of road noise behind me as well. And my voice is a little bit raised as it would be when I'm trying to talk into a hands-free system. So I'm going to use this test throughout every other screen and radio I use. And then hopefully that will give you consistency, so especially plays at the same distance and the same volume in each single test I do. Hi there. Yeah, I'm just calling to do a test run, basically. So this recording is literally just for testing audio units, CarPlay screens, that kind of thing. And what I want to do is simulate the way I'm talking when I'm actually driving in the car. So as you can hear, there's a bit of road noise behind me as well. And my voice is a little bit raised as it would be when I'm trying to talk into a hands-free system. So I'm going to be using this test throughout every other screen and radio I use. And then hopefully that will give you a consistent result, especially if it's played at the same distance and the same volume in each single test I do.
Call quality is very good on the Lamtto and Enon, and I think I could have an absolutely pleasant conversation with them. The Carpuride was a real disappointment, especially because it's got front-facing microphone, and the price point of what this unit is, I just expected it to perform better than that. It was really unusable, and a Podofo, again, just wouldn't even work at all. Carpuride was much better with an external microphone, but the fact that the internal microphone is garbage really shouldn't be something that's an issue with this price point. As some of the units in this test have dashcam, I thought I would do a quick dashcam test, which I know is far from comprehensive, but at least it should give you a small indication of resolution and clarity. The Seicane, which we're looking at the moment, has a 4K front-facing camera and a 1080p rear-facing camera. The overall resolution and clarity of these cameras was better than I thought they would be, with the rear camera falling off at about 36 feet and the front camera falling off at around 45. Overall, the image quality was pretty good for both of them. You may notice on the right hand side of the front-facing camera there's a bit of a blur or a bit of fog on there. It turns out this was a little bit of adhesive that was left over from the cover that protects the lens. I thought I'd got it all off, I hadn't, so there's not actually anything wrong with the camera, that was just my fault. So overall, the camera quality on this Seicane was very, very good. I really, really liked it, and it was a very solid front and rear setup, especially for the money. Moving on to the Enon, it has a 4K front-facing camera and a 1080p rear-facing camera. The front-facing camera on this unit I actually thought was very good and definitely on par with the Seicane in terms of fall-off distance, but of course, as you can see, it's a clearer image which doesn't have any fog on the outside of it. The backup camera though, that wasn't as good as the Seicane, surprisingly. That fell off at just 27 feet, but just like the Seicane's front-facing camera, we did get 45 feet out of the front. Just like the Enon, the Lamtto has a 4K front-facing camera and a 1080p rear-facing camera, and it appears to be the exact same units because well, I think they are the exact same units, and as a result, they do perform absolutely identically and get the exact same points in this test. The Podofo, despite being the most expensive dashcam on this test, is actually the worst. It's a 1080p front-facing camera and a 1080p rear, but as you can see, the front-facing camera is pretty awful. The sky is completely blown out, and this is not even that bright of a day. And both cameras fall off at around 27 feet, so not very good at all. Unfortunately, the Podofo goes to last place in this test. Well, dashcam tests were very interesting. The cheaper the unit, the better the dash camera seems. The Seicane took the best marks out of this test. The front-facing camera was about as good as the Enon and the Lamtto, but it definitely had a better rear-facing camera. The Podofo overall was the worst performer on this test. So if you're just after a good dashcam setup, Seicane is definitely worth considering. However, its placement on the back of the device is not as optimal as it is on the Lamtto and the Enon, because it's lower down, and unfortunately if you've got dashboards that's kind of higher up, you might not be able to get enough vertical height in order to actually see out. So take that consideration into account as well when you're purchasing this device. Well, there we have it. So we're at the end of the video and the results are in. And sometimes it seems like you don't always get what you pay for when it comes to these CarPlay units, with some of the cheaper units outperforming the more expensive counterparts, which is really, really nice to see. At the most expensive end of the spectrum, the Carpuride was a disappointment. Even though it had the best boot up times and the best audio options, its screen was too dull, too hard to use, and also its whole navigation and its just whole clunkiness and its size really let it down. And at £229 could have been a lot better, especially from a brand as established as Carpuride. Moving down to the Podofo, that has Android on. It's an interesting proposition. Potentially has a lot of great features, but software is very broken and it just outright failed a few of these tests. On the cheapest end of the spectrum is a Temu, which also has buggy software, but considering it's £100 less, can be at least a bit more forgiving, and that really had the potential to be great. When it was working great, it was fantastic, sometimes being the best, had the best screen, had the best FM transmitter, but it just had these weird glitches that might be able to be solved with a software update. That could be interesting, and I really hope that's the case. Still, at £70, it's a good screen, especially for the money and the functionality it adds into your car. But if you are conscious about the price of the product, maybe the Seicane is worth considering, because overall I'd say it's a better performer. It performs well in pretty much every test, and for $100 it's very, very good value for money. Has the best dash cam of them all, I would say, as well as the best rear facing camera, and overall was just a very good solid unit. Really surprised me, really exceeded expectations. The only downside that might hold some people back at this price point is the mounting method, which I do think is unfortunately its biggest drawback, and might just mean that some people physically can't stick this in their car. Now, if you're going to ask me what the best units were from this entire test, it has to be the Lamtto and the Enon. Both kind of like sisters of one another, like the same unit. Small differences seem to occur in the tests, as well as a £15 price difference. No idea why the Lamtto was slightly quicker to boot up, and also had a slightly brighter screen. Maybe it was just that particular batch was better than the batch that came before us or something, who knows. The Enon though was £15 cheaper, has a slightly nicer box. I'd say it's got a slightly more aesthetically looking pleasing home screen, but overall either of these, they were great performers. They were quick, were laid out very nice, they were consistent, they feel like very polished products, and they are the lightest of the bunch. They have good amounts of accessories with them, and I think they are just excellent units, and would be the ones I'd be using myself if given a choice. So there we have it. I hope that settles it for you. So thank you so much for watching if you made it this far, and I'll hopefully do more videos of this. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. But until then, thank you all for watching, see you soon, and as always, take care.